Football fans, it's your host, Bad Takes, with Bad Takes in Football, back with another video for you. Excited to dive into what happened in Week 10, as well as talk about this Monday Night Football preview. So we'll go ahead and get started shortly. Let's let some people pile in here. While I'm waiting, make sure you hit that subscribe button. As you can see here, I'm on my road to my first 100 subscribers. It really does help me out, and it's free for you to do. So please make sure you subscribe. Building an awesome community here of everyone, NFL football fans. So please come in, have a good time. Tell me your takes. Tell me my takes are bad, whatever that might be. Let's just have a good time. I do these live sessions, these live streams every Monday and Wednesday. Sometimes it changes from 6:30 to 7, but hop on when I can. So really appreciate everyone joining in today. Like I said, we'll get started shortly. Just want to give everyone a little bit of time to pile in here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, first things first, I think the first game we got to talk about today is the game that happened over in Germany. I am talking about the Indianapolis Colts playing against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, something I've talked about when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons pretty much ad nauseum, and it really is the case, is the fact that this team is just extremely inconsistent. They could look like one of the best teams in the NFL, but they could also look like one of the worst teams in the NFL, and it's a week-by-week basis. Generally, it's 1 week they're on, the next week they're off, following week they're back on, and it's just so on and so forth. Michael Penix, he is a big aspect of that as well. Michael Penix has been extremely inconsistent this year. He's shown signs of being one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's also showed signs of someone that looks like a true young sophomore quarterback. I even kind of consider him a rookie just because, you know, he really was limited in the amount he played last year. So that's really the tale of this. The Colts won this game 31-25. What I say about this is one of the games where, you know, the Falcons were actually on, right? I will say Michael Penix probably had one of his better games of the season yesterday, as well as Drake London, his wide receiver. Penix, he didn't throw for a lot of yards. He had 177 yards, but he had one touchdown, no turnovers. That's a huge aspect of his game that, you know, when he has turnovers, that is a really telling story for where this game is going to go. So he didn't necessarily give the ball up. Drake London, like I said, he had 104 yards and a touchdown in this game on 6 receptions. It just wasn't enough against who I think should be the MVP of this league. And I'm talking about Jonathan Taylor, not even Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones also had a pretty decent game. He threw for 255, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But Jonathan Taylor, he ran for 244 yards and 3 touchdowns on 32 carries. What year is this? 32 carries in one game in the NFL in 2025. Did anyone expect 32 carries from one player in the 2025 season? I mean, generally 20 carries is now considered to be a lot. That used to be sort of like the metric, the number of like, is this a 20 carry sort of running back in the NFL? And I'm talking about like the early 2000s or late 90s. That was sort of the benchmark. It's like, oh, does this running back get more than 20 carries a game? Because that's really a true workhorse. And that was when this was a much more run-heavy league. So 32 carries for 244 yards and 3 touchdowns. You can safely say that Jonathan Taylor literally carries this team. The Colts are 8-2 right now, and they got a lot of help from the Jags, who lost to the Texans, to give them a little bit more room in this race as well. So the Colts, they're first right now in their division, and this was the exact sort of bounce-back game they needed after losing to the Steelers last week. That game against the Steelers, it just seemed like the perfect storm when it came to how the Colts performed. Their biggest challenge were turnovers that they had last week. They obviously minimized those and erase them essentially this week. And that's a huge reason why they were able to put up 31 points. Their defense didn't play as strong as people probably would have expected. I know Sauce Gardner, he just got to Indianapolis, and so everyone was like, oh, that's a shutdown corner. That's one less receiver that you have to worry about on defense. He didn't necessarily have his best showing. He gave up a touchdown to Drake London, his only touchdown, and that was sort of a kind of a sign to show like, hey, he's still got to figure some things out in Indianapolis. But again, 31-25, the Falcons are now 3-6. That's a division with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Carolina Panthers are ahead of them right now. But 3-6 is not necessarily out of it right now, especially in the NFC South. Like the Carolina Panthers, they're 5-5. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they lost this week as well. They're 6-3. So they're essentially 3 games behind this Buccaneers team, who goes up against the Buffalo Bills next week. That's not going to be an easy matchup. And so I'm saying all this to say the Falcons season is not over quite yet. It truly isn't. One of the biggest things they need to continue to do, and they did a little bit of a better job this week, is continue to give the ball to Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson, he had 84 yards in this game, on 17 carries. So he definitely got an increase in both carries and yards this week compared to last week. But it's still not enough. Like, they need to use him how CMC is used with the 49ers. He needs to be involved in the pass, he needs to be involved in the run, and he needs to be involved in both of those heavily. I like Bijan Robinson, there's no reason why he shouldn't be a 1,700 yard all-purpose player every single season with his ability. That's I know that sounds like a crazy number, but Bijan Robinson, with where he's at in his career, if he's not getting more than 1,700 yards in all-purpose yards, that is a disappointing season. I think he's pretty much tracking to that, though. Like I will say that. Like, I don't think he's necessarily that far away from that. He's got 679 yards rushing right now, and let's see, if you look at receiving, he's got a little over 1,100 yards currently, right? So we are 10 games through the season. They've played 9 games. The Falcons have, so they've already had their bye. So yeah, he's 1,100 yards. He is on track for that 1,700 yards. He is, but that's what they need out of him. In fact, it'd probably be better if it was closer to 18, 19, 2,000 yards per season. Like, that is the caliber of player he really can be. So we'll see how they handle that. This was a big game for the Colts to get back on track. After a game where you have 5 turnovers like they did against the Steelers, like, that can mess with your head. That can really mess with your mental, can mess with your confidence. Daniel Jones was a big part of that. And so him being able to bounce back in this game, making that game much more of an exception rather than the rule, is a huge win for this Colts team, because not saying, he can go back to his New York Giants Daniel Jones, but, you could potentially start having that leak into your mind as to, like, is this really the guy? Is he really this good? Or are we just seeing some sort of fluke season right now? Sam Darnold has the same sort of situation in Seattle. I think a lot of teams are just or a lot of players, a lot of fans are just kind of waiting for that next shoe to drop. Like, oh, when's he going to play like the Sam Darnold that I know? And it just hasn't been the case. So I am happy for this Colts team. Again, they added Sauce Gardner, so they are going all in this season. They really feel like they could win it all this season. I love what Tyler Warren's been able to do for this team. He had 99 yards in this game on 8 receptions, so he continues to be the workhorse in the pass game for this Colts team, and I just see them continue to roll from this. So, like I said, big game for the Colts. Falcons, they still just need to figure some things out. They're just a little too inconsistent. They have pretty solid weapons. They have a good defense. They're just not able to put it together on a week-in, week-out basis. 3-6 in the division that they're in with the roster that they have, I think that's a little concerning. I'm not 100% sure, how they feel about it internally, but I can tell you they shouldn't be a 3-6 team. Again, a lot of that comes down to the inconsistency and performance from players like a Michael Penix. Next game I would talk about. Let's talk a little bit about this Giants Bears game. So first things first, Jackson Dart, he went down, I would say halfway through this game, I think it was, with a concussion. And basically, when Jackson Dart went down, it was probably somewhere in the third quarter. That's where this game really turned around. Like, I'm not trying to say this to be mean to Bears fans, but what I will say is this Jackson Dart, if he continued to play in this game, I really don't think the Bears would end up winning this game at the end. The Bears had, they had Russell Wilson, or sorry, the Giants had Russell Wilson come in for, I believe, 2 drives. And in those drives, he was 3 for 7 for 45 yards. Like, they had a chance to close this game out. They were up by, I believe it was 3 points when they had the ball, and they could have literally ran the clock out. They could have. Turnover on downs. They punted the ball, I should say. And Caleb Williams, credit to Caleb Williams, 220 yards in the air, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He also ran a touchdown in. He had 63 yards on the ground in this game. I forget a lot about how he can scramble, and he does actually have some pretty decent speed. Caleb Williams does, and he hit a touchdown run to win the game for this Bears team. This Bears team, they're 6-3 right now. They are right behind the Green Bay Packers, who play tonight, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Green Bay Packers in a little bit. But I will say, Caleb Williams, he's starting to figure some things out. He's not looking, I say that, but like, I know they lost to the Ravens. He went up against Tyler Huntley, and he lost that game. But I feel like there's some confidence in him. I feel like there's a little bit more rhythm to his game. So I'm liking what I'm seeing, and I'm also sad for the Giants. Again, Brian Daboll fired, Jackson, like, Brian Daboll, I don't think he was the answer. I saw that coming. I think that was going to happen at the end of the season. The fact that they did it this early on, I think somewhat does a little bit of a disservice to Jackson Dart. I hope they don't change up too much from like a system perspective or anything like that. I doubt they will. Most likely will be some sort of interim coach. I haven't seen who they have necessarily named as that interim coach yet. I just know that Daboll's gone. But again, Jackson Dart, he was 19 of 29 for 242 yards in this game when he was injured. He also had 66 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing in this game. He was their offense. He was the Giants' offense in this game. And so again, this Giants team, they were leading. They were up 17-7 when Jackson Dart went down, and the Bears put up 14 points and they put up 3 with the remaining time left. And that is exactly how we ended up where we are. And again, this Giants team, it sucks that they're struggling the way that they are, because I love the young talent they have. I've talked about that ad nauseum. I'm expecting Jackson Dart to probably sit out at least a game, maybe even 2, just because, like, what's the point? The Giants are 2-8. They're not going to go anywhere close to winning their division. If anything, just continue to lose and get yourself like a solid offensive lineman, someone that can protect Jackson Dart and block for Cam Scatterbo next year. Because that's really what this team needs, or just like another offensive weapon. Like, get someone on the opposite side of Malik Neighbors. That would mean a lot to this team. As for the Bears, they still have really good opportunity to make the playoffs. They really do. 6-3. Like I said, they're right behind the Packers in that race for the NFC North. I know that's not for the division necessarily, but they can compete for one of those wild card spots. So we'll see what happens there. Does anyone in chat, what do you think? Do you think the Bears have a shot at getting to the playoffs? I really do think they do. So I just posted that in chat. Let's see if anyone responds to that. Next game we're going to go, and this is one of those any given Sunday games, guys. This is why they still play the actual games, is this game. And I'm talking about the Bills versus the Dolphins. Now, I already posted a video about this game, but I still want to talk about it on here. So, first off, the Bills being 6-3, having this. I think it's something like the fourth easiest schedule in the NFL. It is a little bit alarming to me. I will say that. I'm not saying you need to be perfect in the NFL, but when you're going up against a 3-6 opponent, albeit on the road, I will say that, and you lose to the Miami Dolphins, but not only just lose to them, you let them run all over you. Like Devon Achane, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns in this game on 22 carries. Like that was the type of game they were expecting probably from James Cook. They probably thought that James Cook was going to have that sort of stat line. He was held to 53 yards on 13 carries. This Dolphins team, they started out 16-0 at halftime. And so this Bills team, they weren't able to run the ball a lot. When they did run, it was half the time it was Josh Allen running, and he fumbled the ball. He had 2 major fumbles in this game that caused scoring drives from the Dolphins. Like Tua Tagovailoa, he didn't even have that good of a game either. He had 2 touchdowns, but also 2 interceptions on 173 yards passing. Josh Allen threw for over 300 yards. He had 2 touchdowns and an interception. Like if you were to just compare, if I were to show you that stat line said, hey, Josh Allen threw for 306 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Tua threw for 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on 173 yards passing. Who won? What would you say? I would say the Bills won, but they didn't. We're sitting here, the Bills lost 30-13. And again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they can't stop the run on defense. That is essentially their kryptonite, especially on the defensive side. But also their offense sometimes struggles as well. Like I know, again, Allen had the yards, 306 yards, but they couldn't run the ball. And that run game is truly what actually makes this offense go. When James Cook is going, that's when this team is at their best. Josh Allen doesn't even need to play at an MVP level when that happens. Like it's very obvious that James Cook is essentially the little cog in the machine that really gets it to go. I'm going to be curious to see what the Bills do. At this point, you can't trade for anyone. The trade deadline is up, so you have to find someone off the streets. Because right now, Ed Oliver, he's out for probably a couple more games at least, and he was a huge part of your defense. He was a big part of the pass rush. He was a big part in the run stopping. So losing him has a huge impact on this team. And I think we're seeing that right now. I really do think that's a huge reason why the Dolphins were able to run all over this team. So, again, props to the Dolphins. I said it in my video. They did not show any quit this week, and they haven't the last couple weeks. I really thought that they had already thrown it in. I thought they threw the towel in 5 weeks into the season. But here we are. They won a game. You know, they're 3-7, and I don't think they have any sort of shot of actually getting anywhere playoff-wise. But, you know, you look at the teams they've beaten. You know, they've beaten the Jets, the Falcons, and the Bills, right? That's an upward trajectory right there, in that order. You know, they did lose to teams like the Panthers. They lost to the Browns. You know, those are some tough losses. But, I mean, they've also lost to the Colts. They've lost to the Bills, right? The Chargers, the Ravens. Like, so they've had some, like, normal losses. Teams you'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You lost to them. So I'll be curious to see what they do, if they're able to continue to turn things around. I wonder how much Tyreek Hill being out of that locker room has helped this team. No one's necessarily talking about that right now, but I do think that's like an actual thing that should be kind of mentioned. Is like, hey, did this team come more together when Tyreek Hill was out of the picture? Because to me, it's not exactly aligning, but I feel like I have seen this team show a lot more fight in them since Tyreek Hill has gone. So we'll see about that. Let's talk a little bit about this Ravens versus Vikings game. This was like an interesting game. I would say much more of like a defensive game than the score would actually show. And what I mean by that was it took a little bit for both of these offenses. And I will say the Vikings offense never actually really got going, right? McCarthy threw for 248 yards. He had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. In my opinion, he had 3. That one to Roquan was suspect. The fact that they just on a quick review, turn that back over was a little bit crazy to me. But you're looking at this Ravens stat line. And it wasn't like they blew the numbers out of the water, even though they had 27 points. A lot of this came down to turnovers. Like I said, he did have 2 interceptions. There's also a kick return that was fumbled that the Ravens end up scoring on. But Lamar Jackson, he had 176 yards passing, 1 touchdown. Derrick Henry, 75 yards rushing on the ground. Zay Flowers, 75 yards receiving. So again, these aren't like dropping numbers. I will say the Ravens were just consistent throughout the game in the sense that they scored in every quarter. So did the Vikings, but the Vikings just couldn't, like both teams in the beginning, especially the Ravens. The first 4, I think, scoring drives for the Ravens were field goals. I think it was at one point it was like 12-10, and a huge aspect of that was literally just field goals. So I don't know. This game just felt weird. It was like a mucky game. It almost felt like it should have been played in Lambeau outside, like in a rainy game, just like how it felt, because it wasn't clean on either sides. Now, this is the 3rd straight win for the Ravens. Ravens flock. You have to be pretty excited about what you're seeing. The defense does look much better. Let's talk about this for a second, because I don't think people are paying enough attention to it. Besides, like I would say, the commentators in game, what Kyle Hamilton is doing out there on defense is wild. Like, he is playing essentially every single position. It's, if you have a hole to fill, if you have a problem to solve, call Kyle Hamilton. That's basically what Zach Orr is doing. Wherever he feels like they need to focus their defense, he puts Kyle Hamilton there. If it's at the line, Kyle Hamilton will rush off the edge like he's a defensive end. Or an outside linebacker. If it's in the run game, you'll see him line up at the dime at the nickel linebacker position. If it's in the pass, you'll see him lined up at safety, at slot. He is all over the place. I'm not saying he should win defensive, player of the year, because I think there are some players that are a little bit more deserving, but he is the MVP of the defense for this Ravens team. They had all these problems, and it all changed as soon as they moved Kyle Hamilton out of the safety position. They're like, we need you on the line. We need you on the edge. And every offense is scared of what he's doing because he's a freak of nature. He's like 220 pounds, 6'4". They talk about him, the Ravens players, they call him an avatar because he just isn't a normal human being. He's like a freak of nature. He's so long. He has like game speed too. He's quick, twitchy, and like he has game speed. He had a terrible 40-yard dash in the combine, which I think helped him fall to where the Ravens were able to draft him. But again, to me, he's one of the top defenders in the NFL right now, and it's fun to watch how they play, how they use them. So Ravens, I think their next game is against the Browns. That's going to be another winnable game for them. The Browns are reeling right now. Dylan Gabriel looks like he's a little lost. We'll see what happens with them. If might be the first start for Shedeur Sanders. I'm not saying Dylan Gabriel hasn't earned the right to continue to start, but I think if you're the Browns, you need to see what else you have just to see what options you have, because why would you draft Shedeur Sanders and at least not see what you have, especially with how poorly you have been playing. Speaking of them, we'll talk about this game just very briefly. I called it in the preview. I called it the garbage bowl. The Cleveland Browns lost to the New York Jets 27-20. And here's what I'll say from the bright side. On the bright side, the fact that there was 47 points in this game made it remotely exciting. Now, again, I talked about Dylan Gabriel. It's not even like he played poorly. He had 167 yards, 2 touchdowns in this game. When you compare that to Justin Fields, again, Justin Fields, this Jets team won 27-20, and Justin Fields was 6 for 11 for 54 yards in the entire game. That's not a quarter. That's not a half. It's not 3/4 of a game. That's the full fucking game. 54 yards on 6 of 11 throwing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Breece Hall, you're like, okay, so Breece Hall had to go all like crazy, right? 21 carries for 83 yards. So now you're probably sitting here wondering, okay, where did all those points come from? And here's honestly the best part. This is the best part of the whole situation. Ready for this? First touchdown, 99-yard kick return for a touchdown. Second touchdown for the Jets, 74-yard punt return for a touchdown. Field goal, touchdown, passing touchdown to Breece Hall, and then a field goal. So their first two touchdowns were from special teams. It was a 99-yard kickoff return and then a 74-yard punt return. And again, this Browns team, they had two touchdowns. They actually had this game tied at going into the second half. And the biggest difference was the fact that, in the fourth quarter, the Jets got a touchdown and the Browns didn't. They got a field goal and so did the Jets. 7-point game. I mean, at a certain point, you just got to say stuff. Both these teams are 2-7. Right? Both of these teams are absolutely god-awful. Like, they should almost just cancel games like this. Like, it shouldn't even be allowed to be televised. When you have a matchup between two 2-7 teams, like two terrible teams, they should just be like, forfeit, make them do a coin toss or something ridiculous. How about best of 3 rock, paper, scissors? That's how they should determine games like this. Because when you have a winning quarterback throw for 56 yards on 6 for 11, what the hell are we watching? Like, how is that even a game? Like, Dylan Gabriel, 167 yards, 2 touchdowns. Respectable. Justin Fields, though, 54 yards. I just can't get over that. How the hell is that a televised NFL football game? How are you a professional quarterback? That's mind-boggling. And the crazy part is, like, he's had many games like this. Many games. Let me just pull this up. And I know he's kind of starting out of necessity because his backup basically injured his knee in practice after they had named him the starter. But let's just look up his stats in some of these games just to kind of like go through some of these. Okay. You ready for this? This is wild. Browns, 54 yards against the Browns. 244 against the Bengals. 46 against the Panthers. 45 against the Broncos. 283 against the Cowboys. 226 against the Dolphins. 27 against the Bills. 218 versus the Steelers. What the hell is that? What do you do with that sort of stat line? That is unbelievable. He has 6 touchdowns and 1 interception. Like, when you, like, kind of put all this stuff together, you're like, man, there's some parts where you're like, he actually looks like a good quarterback. And there's some times where it's like, I could do better. And I'm not even kidding. Like, I legitimately think I could have probably outperformed Justin Fields in that game against the Browns. Call me crazy. Go ahead. But 54 yards, I am pretty confident I could throw 54 yards against the Browns team. I truly do believe that. And so, yeah, that's all I really wanted to say about this game is Justin Fields throwing for 54 yards is absolutely insane. But, yeah, here we are. Let's talk a little bit about the Patriots versus the Buccaneers. The Bucs have started to lose a little bit of momentum. I think they've lost a little bit of juice. That's the first thing I want to say. I think this was the matchup in the game I was probably most excited about, and it did live up to that, I think, to an extent. But one thing I will say is, like, when I watch this Bucs team, they don't have like that same sort of magic that I saw at the beginning of the season. Like, they're still playing well. Don't get me wrong. They're 6-3, right? This is not a bad team by any means. But, like, there's just a little bit of a spark that they're missing. And I'm actually seeing that same spark in this Patriots team. This Patriots team has won 7 games in a row at this point. That is unbelievable given how young and how unexperienced this team is. We have a rookie running back. You have a second-year quarterback. Their top receiver in this game was Mac Hollins. He doesn't even wear shoes to games. Right? Their 2 top linebackers in their run defense are undrafted rookie free agents. Spillane, love that guy. What a dog, right? This team, like, there's so many things that just don't make sense about this Patriots team, except for one thing, it's Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel is such a good coach, and he's finally figured out how to put this whole team together. Travion Henderson, I've been talking about him at nauseum. I've been waiting for him to break out. He was progressing, like better game. The last like 3 games, really, I've been seeing that. 147 yards rushing in this game. He had 2 like huge explosive runs in this game that were really the difference in this game. That truly, because the Bucs actually had a couple chances to win this game at the end. One of them, they turned it over on downs on a 4th down, and then at the end they just couldn't get there. Credit to the fact that the Bucs did not give up in this game. Like I said, Travion Henderson with like 1 minute and 30 seconds left had like a huge touchdown that I thought made it so that this game was completely like I didn't think there was any chance for the Bucs team to come back. Again, they lost 28-23, and again, they had a shot to actually win this at the end. They just couldn't pull through. I'm a big fan of Baker still. 273 yards, 3 touchdowns in this game. No sort of running game to really speak of for this Bucs team. That's what's really missing. If they can find a way to have a more effective run game, I do think this Bucs team could find themselves in the Super Bowl at the end of this season. Like, I think they're that good because they'll get Mike Evans back. They have 2 really good young receivers in Tez Johnson as well as Emeka Ibuka. And so they're really helping them out. And so as they continue to get more and more healthy, get some more weapons back, I do think this team is going to be able to figure some things out. But yeah, 8-2. This Patriots team being 8-2, I thought they were going to win. I thought they were going to be a playoff team potentially. I thought they were going to fight for a wild card spot. I didn't think they were going to be the top of their division and have like a 2-point or 2-game lead over the Bills right now. That's pretty crazy to me. But hey, props to this Patriots team. They just figure things out. Again, Travion Henderson being able to have the game he had in this game, I think that was truly the difference maker. Again, can't take anything away from Drake May. Probably, I wouldn't say like a bad game by any means. Wasn't his best. He did throw an interception. He was close to like 50% completion percentage as well, but he did still throw for 270 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. So I'm really curious to see what happens with this Patriots team. Can they stay on a roll, right? Can this Patriots team continue to win? The next upcoming games they have, which tells me they probably do have a good legitimate shot of actually going on a run. They play the Jets, they play the Bengals, and then the Giants. Those are 3 very winnable games. You know, this Bengals team, like, they have a really good offense, but their defense is just Swiss cheese. It's worse than Swiss cheese. I don't even know what to call it, but it's terrible. And so they actually have a legitimate shot to go potentially 10 wins in a row, and then they do face the Bills again. And the Bills probably aren't happy with how the game went last time they played, right? The Patriots winning that game in Buffalo. So we'll see what happens there. But this Patriots team, they're the real deal. Again, when you get in here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm on my road to my first 100 subscribers. It really helps me out. Also, make sure you're active in chat. Tell me what you think about this week's games. I posted a couple questions in there. Do you think the Bears actually have a shot at making the playoffs? They're actually legitimate contenders at this point. So tell me what you think about that. We got a couple of, I'll call them snoozer games potentially, but next game I'm going to talk about, Saints versus the Panthers. Tyler Shuck, this was the Tyler Shuck show. That's really the best way to explain this game. He had 282 yards, 2 touchdowns in this game, no interceptions. He actually looked like he knew what he was doing out there. He looked like he was commanding the offense. They didn't go absolutely nuts on this Panthers team, right? 17 points. It was 17-7. Chris Olave had a really big touchdown in the beginning of this game. He had 104 yards in the touchdown. Again, that's what really kind of sparked this win for the Saints. You know, they were down 7-3. Rico Dowdle ran it in for a touchdown to start the game, and you kind of felt like, okay, this Panthers team came to play today. I'm just going to go out there and say it, though. I know I've said this before. Bryce Young is absolute dog water. Like, when are the Panthers going to try to figure something else out? Because, like, are they really going to be stuck with him for the next 2 years? Like, when you look at the Panthers, they gave up so much to get Bryce Young. He had 124 yards throwing and an interception this game. Like, he does not actually do anything proactive for this team, in my opinion. He just doesn't. Rico Dowdle, 18 carries for 53 yards, 1 touchdown. Like I said, he started the game out with a touchdown. But this Panthers team, like, think about this. They gave up so much to get Bryce Young, right? You're talking about 2 first-round picks, DJ Moore, and I think there might have been something else involved in that, maybe a second-round pick. And Bryce Young, the free agents going into next year are Aaron Rodgers, you have Russell Wilson, you have Daniel Jones is your best shot, in my opinion. Other than that, it's Joe Flacco and Tyrod Taylor. So it's all the old heads, right? It's all the old quarterbacks that just won't leave. And then it's Daniel Jones, who is actually a Charlotte local. So there is like this really crazy outside sort of shot that if the Panthers throw a huge contract at Daniel Jones, they could potentially get him. But other than that, who would you draft in the draft this year at quarterback? All the college quarterbacks right now, besides I guess Mendoza out of Indiana, are not it. None of them are the answer for any franchise. Just sad. Like I wanted Archie Manning to be the guy. I wanted Sellers to be the guy out of USC. Neither one of them are it. They're not the answer, and so they're kind of stuck with them. Now on the other side, Tyler Shuck, you got to be happy for him. He way outplayed Bryce Young in this game. I mean, we're talking. They're probably like the same age, oddly enough. But like you're talking about a rookie quarterback that went into Carolina and put on a clinic as like, hey, this is how you produce for a team. And I'm still sitting here in Charlotte, North Carolina, wondering, am I ever going to see a game where Bryce Young wins the game for this Panthers team? I want to see a game where Bryce Young is the reason why the Panthers win. Just one time. Just give my friends that satisfaction. Because right now, I'm kind of having to give them a come to Jesus talk and say, hey guys, we've been here before. And I know you want to have hope. I know you want to believe. But he ain't it, man. He is not the answer. And I had to have that conversation, and it sucks. I don't want to be that guy. Does anyone actually want to be that guy? I don't want to be that guy. So, again, an anomaly. I wonder what's going to happen from that perspective. But again, happy for Tyler Shuck. Happy for Chris Olave. 62-yard touchdown in the second quarter. He showed he can make some big plays, and they're going to continue to need that, especially since they traded away Raheed Shaheed. This next game was a weird one. I'm talking about the Jaguars versus the Texans. This was one of those games where the Jags went up so big so early. It was like 20-10 at half, and then it became a 29-10 score. And then the Texans in the fourth quarter just decided, first off, Davis Mills in the fourth quarter was like, oh yeah, I know how to throw the ball. Like Nico Collins, 7 catches, 136 yards. But again, the story of this game was Davis Mills, who just didn't give up. Like when you're the backup quarterback, you are not expected to win games. Like just straight up, like that is a known thing. But he completely outplayed Trevor Lawrence. And that's the biggest storyline of this game is the fact that Trevor Lawrence, 158 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Davis Mills, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Trevor Lawrence makes about $50 million a year. Davis Mills probably makes somewhere around 5. Right? So he's getting 10x the amount of money that Davis Mills gets, Trevor Lawrence, and at this point, you can't say he deserves it. Like, there's no chance he actually does. The Jags team, they're 5-4. They should have been 6-3. They had this game locked down, and they just couldn't put it away. They struggled to run the ball at the end. Travis Etienne, he started out really well. But he only had 16 carries for 58 yards in this game by the end of the game. Like, he was tracking for like a 100-yard game too, and just completely got shut down in the second half. Jacoby Myers, they did bring him in. He did lead this team in receiving, but he only had 41 yards. So like this Jags team, again, they're 5-4. They had a real legitimate shot to keep up with the Colts and continue to fight for like a wild card spot. Tonight or yesterday was a perfect reason why they will not be in that race. I don't think there's a single part of me that believes that this Jaguars team will be in the playoffs at the end of the season. Now, for the Texans, congrats on winning this game. You're 4-5. Winning this game without C.J. Stroud is a huge tell for the fact that this team doesn't give up either. You know, they definitely got some fight in them. You know, they're still behind the Jags in this playoff and in this divisional race. Again, it's a one-horse race at this point. It's the Colts' division to lose. I don't see that happening whatsoever. But, hey, congratulations to Davis Mills. Let's talk a little bit about these 4 o'clock slate of games. What I will say is all 3 of these 4 o'clock games, or second games, like 3 o'clock games, 2 o'clock games, wherever you are. But like the Rams, first off, there was no chance for this 49ers team in this game. You know, Kyron Williams, Matt Stafford had just insane games in this game. Their offense is just humming. Lions completely spanked the Commanders 44-22, right? And then you had the Cardinals, another 44-22 game. The Seahawks spanked the Cardinals, right? You know, it was just like all 3 of these games, like you watched them, you're like, and you just knew, oh, okay, the Rams are going to win this game. Same thing with the Commanders, like, oh, you knew the Lions were going to win that game from the beginning. And then this Cardinals game, the Seattle was up at one point. It was like 35-0. That's how big of a lead they had. I'm pretty sure it was 35-0 before the Cardinals put up any sort of points. The points that they put up came from turnovers too. That was the worst part. Sam Darnold had 2 fumbles and he also threw an interception, and that is literally where those 22 points came from. Were those situations. So this Seattle team, they're 7-2. This NFC West race between Seattle and the Rams especially, you know, the 49ers, they dropped one to the Rams in this game. The 49ers are now 6-4, still in fighting spots, right? But this Seahawks Rams, when did they play each other? That's actually going to be, that'll be the game of the year, I think, in my opinion. I think, wow, they don't play, let's see here. So yeah, the Seahawks, they play next. They play next week. Rams, Seahawks. I think that will be the game of the week. Maybe it has potential for game of the year, but Rams, Seahawks, that's going to be an exciting matchup. Now, this Commanders team, props to Marcus Mariota. You can tell this team respects him. He threw for 213 yards, had 2 touchdowns. They have 0 run game. The giving up, I still don't understand why they gave up Brian Robinson. I'm not saying Brian Robinson would have solved all their issues, but your top rusher had 30 yards. Second rusher had 25, then 22, 16. So they had a total of 93 yards, but like they don't have a guy. Like Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt, like unless you're trying to tell me that their run, like their offensive line is bad, which I don't think it is that terrible. Like you shouldn't be averaging 2.7 yards a carry. The defense of the Lions is good, but it's not like dominant, right? Jahmyr Gibbs, though, this was the Lions game. Jahmyr Gibbs he bounced back, and he bounced back in a huge way. So did Montgomery had a good run, good game as well. But Jahmyr Gibbs had 142 yards rushing in this game. He also had two rushing touchdowns, and again, he was a huge reason why the Lions went up early and just never looked back, because I think he had like the first. No, I think Amon-Ra had the second touchdown of the game, but Jahmyr Gibbs was the reason why the Lions game went the way it did. Like they dominated from the beginning. This Commanders team, they're 3-7. Did anyone actually expect that? That's a whole. I mean, I know that Jaden Daniels is out; he's been injured. But even when Jaden Daniels played, like they didn't look that good. The best game that this Commanders team had was against the Chargers. That was the best performance this Commanders team has had. And they haven't really gotten anywhere close to that since then, or even before that. So I'm not sure how I feel about this Commanders team. I do know that there's zero shot of them making the playoffs. That is 100% a fact. Now, again, on the other side, this Lions team, the NFC North is theirs to lose, even though the Packers are technically ahead of them because of their tie. I still think the Lions are going to find a way to take this division. I don't have enough trust in the Packers. The Packers, and I'll talk about this in a second, but the Packers, they just they play to the level of their competition. Like that's just the best way to describe this Packers team. They'll beat really good teams, right? But then they'll also lose to the Browns, they'll lose to the Panthers, and they'll tie the Cowboys. All three of those teams are not good. And so I just don't trust them. I really don't. I know that they play the Eagles tonight, so watch them actually play at a very high level. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that you'll see a really good Packers team tonight. But I do not see them being consistent enough. I do not trust their level of play enough. And maybe that's just me being a Dan Campbell guy too. I'll put that out there. Love Dan Campbell. But again, I do expect the Lions to be first in this division after tonight especially. A little preview for what about this game. We'll talk a little bit about the Steelers and the Chargers game before I kind of wrap things up with the Monday Night Football preview. I think the biggest tell in this game was Aaron Rodgers just had himself quite the day, right? I think that's the nicest way to put it for the Steelers fans out there. Aaron Rodgers just did not look. He looked like a grumpy old man. Right, let's just say it how it is. Like, when I watched Aaron Rodgers last night, he always had some sort of snarl on his face, and he was always shaking his head, and then he was always saying, "What the fuck?" Like, he was just constantly just unhappy. He just looked like a grumpy old man out there. Truly, like a grumpy old man, because he is an old man. Like, that is a fact. He threw for 161 yards, 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown. This game was 3-2 going into the second quarter, and that's when the Chargers finally figured some things out and were able to crack the code with this Steelers defense. The Steelers defense, they were pretty stout, I'd say, even throughout. Right, there was a couple times I think at the end where you could just tell they were exhausted. Vidal at the end especially was getting some decent runs that were able to help them kind of run time off the clock, making it really hard from a possession perspective for the Steelers to get back in this game. I mean, there was a point in the fourth quarter where this was a one possession game, and the Steelers did have a chance to be able to win it or come back and win it, but Rodgers threw an interception, and it was game over from that perspective because the Chargers were able to move the ball enough in order to actually run the clock off. That's basically what happened. This Steelers team, they're 5-4. They have opened the door for both the Bengals and the Ravens. Both of those teams at this point, I believe, still control their own destiny. I actually maybe not the Bengals, but I know for a fact the Ravens control their own destiny because they still have yet to play the Steelers. So if the Ravens win both of those games, they would be first in this division at this point. So we'll see what happens. Justin Herbert had a solid game in this game, 220 yards, 1 touchdown. This was the type of game the Steelers needed to win, right? The way they match up against the 49ers or against the Steelers, I should say, this was the perfect matchup, I think, for the Steelers. I think how they match up against this team, the Steelers had a really good shot of winning this game. The most telling aspect, Roman Wilson was the leading receiver for the Steelers team. He had 35 yards and a touchdown, and that touchdown was in garbage time. They didn't even celebrate. He just ran to the side because it was when the game was already over. So that says a lot about where this team is. Jalen Warren actually had some really good plays, though, for the Steelers. I will say that. I need to give Jalen Warren a little bit more credit because to me, I didn't think he was the guy. I was kind of shocked they let Najee Harris go. I still don't think Jalen Warren is the guy, but I think he's better than I need to give him a little bit more respect than what I give him, because 70 yards on 14 carries, and again, some of those, like, he had that play where he like ran and jumped over a secondary guy and ended up getting a first down after the fact. He's an athlete. He's a good player. So we'll see if he's able to keep that up. The Steelers team has not been able to successfully run the ball essentially all season. So we'll see if they're able to keep that up. On the defensive side, Alex Highsmith was probably their most shining player. He had two sacks in this game. I don't believe T.J. Watt had a sack. He was disruptive though. I will say that. I don't think it was. Yeah, he did have a sack in this game. So T.J. Watt, I feel like he started to turn things around in this season as well. He's still tied for 15th with 6 sacks on the year, but I think you might be able to see him get some more sacks in bunches if he's able to stay healthy. But this Chargers team, they're now 7-3. They truly control their destiny in the NFC West, which is crazy, because this NFC West, I mean, you're talking about the 8-2 Broncos, you're talking about the 7-3 Chargers, and then 5-4 Chiefs, right? Those are some serious contenders right there. The Chiefs, they continue to sometimes just look like sometimes they're just too inconsistent. Part of me, after that loss to the Bills, I got off my Chiefs are going to go on a run phase, because they just haven't looked like they're playing at a top level. Let's talk a little bit about this Eagles-Packers game. So, again, to me, I said it a little bit when I talked about the Packers, or I was talking about the NFC North. This Packers team, they do play to the level of their competition. Now, luckily for them, they're playing a 6-2 team, right? They're playing against the Eagles, who generally play at a very high level, especially in big games. Now, this game is in Green Bay. Judging based off of how cold it is outside here in Charlotte, I will say it has to be negative 70 degrees in Green Bay, because I saw snow flurries today. I haven't seen snow flurries in Charlotte in about a year, 2 years. So the fact that I saw snow flurries, alarming, tells me in Green Bay it has to be negative 70 degrees Fahrenheit. I expect this Eagles team to actually come out with a win in this game. I think the Packers are going to struggle in the run, and they're going to force Jordan Love to try to make way too many plays. I think he'll end up with a lot of yards and a fair amount of touchdowns, but I think he's also going to have a fair amount of turnovers in this game. I think this is a game where you're going to see Jordan Love throw for 300 plus yards, but he's also going to have 3 touchdowns, and then he'll have 2 or 3 interceptions. That's really where I see this game going. And hopefully for the Eagles, we finally see Saquon Barkley have the game we've been waiting for him to have all season. Saquon Barkley, I think he actually played pretty well last week. Let me just pull this up really fast. Yeah, last week he finally turned it on. I thought so. He had 150 yards and a touchdown against the Giants. This is another game where he needs to turn it on, because let's really quickly listen to these yardage numbers for Saquon Barkley this year. All right, so again, 14 carries for 150 yards last week. Great game. 18 carries for 44 against the Vikings. 12 carries for 58 against the Giants. 6 carries for 30 yards against the Broncos. 19 carries for 43 yards against the Bucks. 18 carries for 46 yards. 22 carries for 88 yards. 18 carries for 60 yards. He has 519 yards on the season. Let's pull this up season leaders, right, real quick, just to kind of give you a frame of reference as to where he is right now. He's 19th in the league right now in rushing. This was the guy that led the league last year, and honestly, a lot of people argued should have been the MVP. And I'm not going to disagree with him. But, I mean, you have players like Quinshon Judkins ahead of him, right? You have Ashton Genty, Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs isn't even having that good of a year, and he's still ahead of him. Again, it says a lot about where Saquon Barkley is right now. it's just he's not doing what they need him to do. That is a huge issue for this Eagles team. This Eagles team is stacked as well, right? I'm kind of surprised they did nothing with A.J. Brown. Like, if they were smart, they would have traded A.J. Brown. They trade all the time. Why wouldn't you trade A.J. Brown? He's not even happy being on the team. He's just going to cause problems. And he's got one more season left on his contract, I believe, next season. So you would actually get some value out of that trade. And so we'll see what happens from that perspective. Again, when it comes to actually projecting this game, again, I think the Eagles will actually win this game in Lambeau. I think the Eagles will win this game. I think it will be pretty high scoring. I think it's going to be 26-28. That's really where I see going. It's going to be a weird scoring game, 26-28. Eagles win. But that's it for me today. I really do appreciate everyone for watching. Thank you again for joining. This is your host, Bad Takes, with Bad Takes in Football, signing out.